So I'm not going to be able to sleep, which means I'm not going to be safe to drive, and I'm not going to be able to communicate effectively. There's a spot right back here on the back of my head where there's a hair that's sticking up. The itchiness from cutting my hair is over, so I don't have to deal with that anymore, which is good. Even if I'm able to stay calm while talking to the detective when he calls, I'm not going to be able to communicate effectively. Dry heaves suck. That's one of the major issues with severe anxiety. Meanwhile, I'm afraid of going to sleep because I end up reliving a lot of the things that I've gone through. I've got a good portion of this stuff packed up. That stuff on the bed is ready to go. I had it out and decently organized for if I was able to get help, but with my help ditching out at the last minute, it's too much. Like Mandy Singer said, it's too much. Like my little sister said, it's too much. Like my autism advocate said, it's too much. It's just too much. Now there's no train going by. Nobody's talking over me. There's nobody screaming in the background. There's nobody with a booming voice. It's just me here, so I'm able to somewhat control my tone, but I'm still scared shitless. Now with all of these people that I'm supposed to go to for help having overwhelming caseloads, I'm not getting the help that I need. I gotta have a steady address. And I have to have a caseworker at the same time. The only time that I have had anything closely approaching a steady address since Natalie died was in chapel when I was in low income. The problem is I didn't have a caseworker. Jane Beebe was court ordered to be my caseworker, and she didn't do her job. That's the problem with not having everything that you need. That's the problem with being falsely accused of crimes that you didn't commit. I admitted to the things I actually did. It makes no sense to me why they kept on dropping the charges on the things that I actually did. Even with me admitting to those things, they kept dropping the charges. But also, I explained to them that the reason that I had to commit those crimes is because Dual County Sheriff's Department would not do their jobs. People like Jen Beebe would not do their jobs. And I had to be afraid that because they weren't doing their jobs, that people would continue to threaten and harass me, and assault me, and throw projectiles at me like beer bottles and the like, and scream out profanities at me while driving down the street. Now, them screaming out profanities at me driving down the street, that's not a big major thing. I mean, it really is a screwed up situation, but it's not life-threatening. Whereas one of those beer bottles bounced off of my head. It literally bounced off. It luckily was empty and it did shatter, but that was as I was walking over the viaduct. I mean, the guy was pretty close to me when he threw it, and that is a very life-threatening situation. But with me not catching the license plate number and only barely catching a glimpse of the guy and seeing his vehicle, like, you know, when you get hit in the head with a beer bottle, it throws you for a loop. I've been hit in the head a lot. Now, with the guards in the jail and the guards in the prison, they didn't punch me. They used pressure points and, well, joint displacement, basically. Obviously, I should know the actual term for it, but at the moment it's not coming to me, and that's what lack of sleep and anxiety and fear do. And long term like this, it does result in brain damage. Knowing these things doesn't prevent them from happening. Knowing that not being able to get the help that I need is going to result in long-term brain damage, permanent brain damage, it's scary. It's scary to know that. It's scary that there's hundreds and hundreds of articles in medical journals about it, and that it's simply not being acknowledged. A lot of the people at the very beginning may have meant well, but without them understanding and taking the time to understand, their well wishes don't do a damn bit of good. For me, being in a severe anxiety state for 5 years straight, 6 years straight now, I don't even know how to explain to somebody what that's like. I don't know how to explain it in a way that someone can put themselves in my shoes. I mean, I can kind of explain it as in, well, for my friend Amanda, I could explain to her what it's like to some degree because she lost her mom, and her mom was very much her support network. She gets depressed because she misses her mom. So she has somewhat of an understanding of it. She has difficulty sleeping sometimes because she misses her mom. She's also got special needs kids, so that is a stressful situation, and she's a very loving person. I might puke. With many people, they have expectations of things I'm not capable of doing. Alright. People want me to do things that I'm not capable of doing. When you have a safe environment, being it is your own roof, that gives you some measure of safety, some measure of security. You're allowed to defend yourself in those situations. The conversations that I have had with law enforcement officers, a lot of people have a Nazi mentality of, you have to do what the cops say because the cops said it. That's wrong. You do not have to comply with an unlawful order. The problem is, if you don't comply with an unlawful order, they might shoot you. And although not knowing the law, ignorance is no defense. That's a pretty common saying. But for the police, it's their defense most of the time, especially with rookies. I got a bunch of stuff that having to pick it up and stuff it all into these bags and get it ferried out to the vehicle and all of that. Having to take my electronics out last. People are more likely to steal the electronics than they are to steal the paperwork. The videos from Washington State show that. When the guy stole my stuff and jumped over the fence and then jumped back over the fence without my backpack. I tried going to the cops to get them to do something about it, and they wouldn't. The security guard came and got me, I want to say 2 days later, and they took everything electronic. The people who stole my backpack, or person who stole my backpack, he took all the electronics, but he left all the paperwork. It's too late for me to sit down with a detective and show him everything that for the last 30 days I've been trying to get someone to take seriously. Mandy Singer took it seriously. She's the first person to actually take it seriously. Like, seriously enough to actually look at it. My sister got bored looking at it. She admitted that she got bored looking at it. But she spent most of her time sorting things. Things that are now unsorted because I've had to unpack them and repack them already twice since leaving chapel. Sometimes the camera doesn't catch the sounds that are outside, but somebody started up their vehicle, and because it's cold weather, it's kind of making a whining sound. Everything's disorganized again. That's something that folks aren't understanding about having to go to a homeless shelter. I can't do any of this at a homeless shelter. I couldn't scatter my stuff about the room so that I have different piles for different situations. I couldn't do that in a homeless shelter. I sure couldn't set up my camera and set up my computer, I would have to leave them out in my vehicle. And if I have to leave them out in my vehicle at a homeless shelter, there is a very good chance that it's going to get broken into. The people are going to steal those electronics. Lucky for me, my car looks like an old-ass POS, but you never know when somebody's gonna go to the homeless shelter and be too drunk to go in, so they won't let them into the homeless shelter. They walk by my car and see some blankets. They go in to grab the blankets and see the electronics, and boom! They're off to sell my electronics for their next bottle of booze. Now, obviously, I'm not going through the bags to see what's exactly in them. I'm just trying to get everything packed up because I don't have the time to put it away in an organized fashion. I'm just happy to get it put in the bags so that I can take it to where I need to be next, which is Chapel, Nebraska. I'm in a severe anxiety state. And through everything that has happened since I was in Virginia, I need Alicia Bollinger to stop pretending like I would hurt her, and for many other people to stop pretending like I would hurt any of them, because that's just not me. It's not in my nature. And I've had to do things, force myself to do things that are not in my nature already. There are certain things that just go too far, however. Defending myself, well, for starters, physically, I'm not able to do so. I would have to use some very dirty tricks that could potentially harm somebody or even kill them. And I'm just not willing to do that. So when people are attacking me, I just have to take it. Whether it be the police, or the Bollingers, or one of these web wingnuts, or some random stranger on the street, or Robert Warnick, it doesn't matter. I just have to take it. With Derek Apodaca, I just had to take it. And all of these situations, I just had to take it. Now, it ought to be pretty obvious by now that I'm not a functional human being. I would like to be, but my fear and my paranoia, they're in the way. And it's not like I can just turn it off. Not with these events continually happening. And it's not like I get assaulted every day. But I have to be afraid of being assaulted every day because, well, if I don't have a caseworker who's actually going to advocate for me and actually going to look at what's happened to me, you guys think, well, it's in the past, you should let it go. I can't let it go. Because anyone can commit these crimes against me at any point in time and get away with them. Anyone can assault me and get away with it by calling me mentally ill. Without a caseworker present who has actually got my best interests when they're making decisions. My best interests in mind and my best interests in heart. Nothing is going to happen. Oh my God, that hurts. I've felt bad for anyone that's had to deal with me since I left Virginia. Every single one of them. And I keep thinking about one saying in the Bible every single day. Every day I think about it. And that saying is, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And I'm not sure if you noticed, but I don't have a clue. I don't have any clue how to explain to people what "in my corner" means. It doesn't mean telling me to love myself. It doesn't mean telling me to take care of things by myself that I'm not capable of doing. See, that's another major issue. If you were to take a UA from me right now, you wouldn't find anything in my system except Tylenol. Well, and caffeine. And nicotine, because I do smoke cigarettes. But really, as far as pills or traditional drugs, I guess, be that street drugs or pharmaceuticals or over-the-counter, you're just going to find a couple of Tylenol in me, and that's all. But when I'm severely overwhelmed and suffering from lack of sleep, this is what you end up with. The closer the deadline gets, the less sleep I get. The longer people make me wait, the less sleep I get. The thing with Lisa from Region 2 is that, well, for example, when she was sick and then she came back to work, she had one day to look at my stuff. And she told me there's too much for anybody to go through in one day. For her it was one day. For me it was 5 days of anxiety, because while she was sick she wasn't working on it. But also while she's sick, she's not calling me back, she's not getting back a hold of me, and I have a lot of anxiety over it. Meanwhile, Missy, she's capable of understanding the anxiety better than most. With Mandy Singer, she's capable of understanding the anxiety more than most. The longer it takes to get something done about this, the more people end up dying before anything happens with the evidence. Before they're able to speak up in court, which is where I need them. Christine Buhit is dead. She was a major part of this. George Helmstetter, he had 2 heart attacks back in December. He was a witness to at least one assault in the Boulder County Jail. Having a dog here would have put me to sleep hours ago. That was the great thing about Mandy Singer's place, is that her dog is great. Trying to explain the fear that I experience every single day. Fear of going to the police by myself. And why? These are things that people want to claim that I'm paranoid and delusional because of. Paranoid, yes. Delusional, no. The tactics that are used against the poor are used nationwide. Bail is one of the tricks that's used in order to get poor people to fess up to crimes they didn't commit, because they're afraid of losing everything. A rich person with a lawyer on hand and a big bank account and a good friend, or a friend that they give lots of money to, you know, if they get in trouble, they can get bailed out. For a poor person, the judge already knows that, especially if you're homeless, any amount that he puts down as bail is going to be too much for you to pay. If you're homeless and you have family that cares, and you have the ability to call your family and you have their phone numbers, yeah, you could get bailed out. Maybe. But not if it's 10% of $50,000. Not even if it's 10% of $5,000 if your family is low income. And then there's the fact that if you're on disability, you're low income. And if people donate too much money, you have to count that as income. And that counts against your disability money. So then you get less disability money, and when they recount it, you know, basically you're stuck with whatever amount of money that they readjusted it to for a whole year. And how are you supposed to take care of this legal stuff with that? So I end up rambling at 6 o'clock in the morning, scared because I don't have the money to defend myself. I don't have the money to hire a lawyer. And then the rules and regulations they have for being poor and getting government disability money prevent you from getting the money to hire a real lawyer. So you're stuck with a public pretender, or you're stuck with a shitty readjustment, and obviously $800 a month in this economy is not enough to live on. As a homeless person, yes, but also as a homeless person, I cannot survive on this. When you add extras to it, like the unsafe situation with being in public, whereas most people don't recognize me. Most people, even if they did watch one of these web shows that's got me all over it, they don't recognize me. But it's the few that do that make my life a living hell. There's also the misunderstandings with my autism advocate. What she's able to do is to speak out for autistic people in general, and to get involved a little bit in people's situations, but it's not like having an accredited advocate. Now, that also comes down to what position you hold. Penny Cooper could advocate for me, but she would have to appropriate some time towards actually looking at the situation and looking at the evidence. And at this point, if she was here with me in person, I wouldn't be able to even point out where to get started. I'm probably not far from being incapable of making complete sentences. Lack of sleep and severe anxiety, it really does take its toll on your mental well-being as well as your physical. Fear does play a large part in that. I think I can lay down now, so I'm gonna download this video to YouTube while I lay down for a few minutes. I've got some alarms that are going to go off in just a couple of hours, hopefully, and that'll wake me up and let me know that I gotta take my stuff out to the vehicle and my heart hurts. Now, despite my outward appearance of being calm, it's mostly just exhaustion at this point. And I'm stuck in the freeze loop. I'm going to tell you something about the freeze loop. It's not your fault. You don't choose for this to happen to me. Now, there are things that you can do to help prevent it from happening, but you have to be aware of it. And trying to educate people on it while I'm in the midst of it is beyond complicated. The closer it gets to the deadline, the more of an emotional roller coaster I go through. Now, there's something called the fog. When you have an anxiety attack, you get the fog, which is basically a mental block for 2 to 4 hours, sometimes longer. A panic attack is more severe than an anxiety attack, and the fog could last anywhere from 8 hours to 2 days. When you have a meltdown, it could last, well, I've had people tell me that when they've had a severe panic attack, the fog lasts for up to a week for them. For me, the max is 3 to 4 days. with my anxiety being bad enough that I was puking, that's pretty severe. That's how afraid I am, because I am alone.